I hope those problems helped you practice shifting the supply and the demand for loanable funds. Now, let's end our segment on loanable funds by talking about some practical issues that can come up on macroeconomics exams. One thing that often comes up is when the real interest rate changes, how does that affect the macroeconomy? So let's just take an example. A change in either the supply or the demand for loanable funds will affect the amount of investment, that is, spending on plant and equipment in the economy. And of course, that's critical for how productive the economy is going to be. In the example right here, let's just imagine that the supply of loanable funds decreases. I hope you can think of 2 or 3 reasons at least why this would happen. For instance, foreigners may be less willing to loan us funds than they have been in the past. This decreases the supply of loanable funds and it shifts to the left. You can see the new equilibrium is not here, but here, and that's at a higher real interest rate. This higher real interest rate will translate all the way over here into this graph. This is a graph of how much investment is occurring in the economy. You see, when the interest rate is here, this is the amount that will be spent on new plant and equipment in the economy. But we've just had an increase in the interest rate. And so we'll move up the investment demand curve from this point to this point here. That then decreases the quantity of spending on plant and equipment. And of course, that's critical because that means the economy won't grow as fast as it would have because of this increase in the real interest rate. So you see, when foreigners loan us money, that's really helpful for the U.S. macroeconomy. The last issue we'd like to cover with you is just a note not to confuse the market with loanable funds, which was what we've been working with here, and the money market. It can be confusing because both of these markets have dollars on their horizontal axes and interest rates on their vertical axes. The quantity of loanable funds in the economy is a dollar amount, and so is the quantity of money, but they're not the same amounts. And the real interest rate, as you know, is not the same as the nominal interest rate. The real interest rate is the nominal interest rate minus the inflation rate. These are some differences between the loanable funds market and the money market. There are many more differences. For example, the supply of loanable funds is determined by savers and the behavior of financial intermediaries, whereas the supply of money in the economy is determined by the Fed. The demand for loanable funds is determined by borrowers, whereas the demand for money is determined by all agents in the economy. Let's consider an increase in income and how it affects both of these markets, and you'll see they're not the same. Consider an increase in income. I hope you know that that's something that increases the supply of loanable funds. When income increases, there'll be more spending in the economy, but more savings by households as well. There's your increase in the supply of loanable funds. That's going to decrease the equilibrium real interest rate. But an increase in income, that's something that increases the demand for money. And so there'll be an increase in the nominal interest rate. It's best just to keep the two markets separate in your thinking. And when it comes up on an exam, if there's a question about loanable funds, use this. When there's a question about the money market, that's a completely different analysis. I hope this helped. Here's some more practice problems to lock these concepts in.